Good morning, students. Having discussed about process synchronization and the synchronization tool semaphore, now let us discuss about the classical problems of synchronization. Here we shall discuss three classical problems of synchronization, that is bounded buffer, reader-writer problem and dining philosopher problem. Bounded buffer problem is similar to the producer-consumer problem that we addressed in the start of the chapter. Now let us see the solution of semaphore to the same problem. So these are some of the variables or data structure that is defined. We have the integer n that says the number of buffer, each buffer capable of holding one item. We have a mutex, which is a binary semaphore which ensures mutual exclusion. I think when we had discussed about the semaphore also, we had discussed about your mutex. So it can take a value either a 0 or 1 and it ensures mutual exclusion among the processes. The next two that we have is a counting semaphore, which we have is your empty and full, which is initialized to n and full is initialized to 0. Empty is used to count the number of empty buffers and full is used to count the number of full buffers by the producer and the consumer. Now let us look up to the code of your producer and consumer. Now this is your code for the producer, where we are using the wait signal. If you remember, what was the operation of wait and signal semaphore? Let me again reintroduce it to you. Here you can see the semaphore in wait. We are decrementing the semaphore S, and in signal we are incrementing the semaphore S. Having said that, now let us look back to your producer process code. Now I have just got the glimpse of the initial values. As seen in the previous slide, full is 0, empty is n and mutex is 1. It can take a value either 0 or 1. Now if the producer wants to add an item to the buffer, it is going to call the wait semaphore. So when it is calling the wait semaphore, it is decrementing the n. So if there are n buffers empty, now if it has produced one item, now there is n minus 1 buffers that is empty. The producer process also calls the wait mutex, which ensures that only the producer process is acting on the buffer and no other process is allowed to act on the buffer. So after it calls the wait mutex, it is allowed to add the item to the buffer. So once it has completed adding the item to the buffer, it again signals the mutex. So what happens here when I call wait mutex? 1 is decremented to 0. So let me give back the values here. So what happens? Empty, I am taking it as E. E becomes n minus 1. Previously if there were 5 buffers, that was full. Now there will be 4 buffers that is full, and mutex I am calling it as M, and now M will be 0 because the producer process is using it. And you can see when it is living, it is also calling the, it is also signaling the full. So full that was 0 now becomes 1 because one item is added to the buffer. Now in context, let us see what is happening in the consumer process. So now this will be the input to your consumer process. Now in the consumer process, you can see there was one item that was added. So now the full is 1. Empty is n minus 1 because one of the item is added. Now the mutex is again 1, allowing the consumer process to use the buffer. Now when consumer process starts to use the buffer, it first calls wait of full so that the item that is produced shall be consumed by the consumer. Now the value of full again becomes 0. Now again it is taking the mutex, it is making the mutex 0, indicating that no other process shall be allowed to act upon the buffer. So once the consumer has completed the consumption of the process, So once the process has completed the consumption, now it again signals the mutex, so the mutex value become 1, and now again it is signaling the empty. Now the empty again comes back to n. So once the consumer has completed consuming, it allows it signals mutex indicating any other process or the producer process interested to use the buffer may use. It is again after it is consumed the one item that is produced by the producer, it signals the producer that n buffers are now empty. So we had already seen the issues that was there with the producer and the consumer process. Without this mutual exclusion and allowing one process to complete the execution, which we can see is resolved to a certain extent. The next classical synchronization problem we have is the reader-writer problem. Now, what is the reader-writer problem? We have a set of process which can be categorized either to a reader process or to a writer process. What is a reader process? A reader process is one that reads the data. The writer process is one that can read and also manipulate or change the data. Now, here, if there are multiple reader processes given access to the shared data, it is certainly harmless because there is no change made to the data. All the process is just viewing the data without manipulating the data. But the same does not hold good for a writer process. We cannot allow more than one process to be allowed, more than one writer process to be allowed on the shared data at the same time, because the writer process is manipulating the data. If we allow more than one process to manipulate the data at the same time, we may again end up with data inconsistency issues. Now let us see what is the semaphore solution for the reader-writer problem. Now we have the three So the shared data that we have is the read-write mutex, and the other one is the mutex that ensure mutual exclusion, and we also have another integer variable reader count that counts the number of readers. Now let us look into the algorithm. Now this is the writer process algorithm. As said earlier, if a writer process wish to write, we must ensure that there is only one process that is writing. So we are using the wait and signal. So whenever the writer process wants to write or manipulate the shared data, it is running the wait of read-write mutex. So once it is running the wait of read-write mutex, until it releases or it unlocks, no other writer can be writing. So if process 1 is wanting to write, or process 1 is acting as a writer process, the process 1 runs the wait read-write mutex. So once it completes the execution, it runs signal read-write mutex. So until it runs signal read-write mutex, if there is another writer, say P2, which is interested to write, it has to wait until it signals the read-write mutex. So this ensures that only one process is writing at a time. The next thing that we now let us see the reader process algorithm. Now, if there are, as we discussed earlier, in case of reader process, there can be many processes, many reader processes that can be simultaneously running on a shared data. That is, if there is more than one reader process trying to access the shared data, it can be allowed because it is not manipulating the shared data. Now, we are using all the three variables in this algorithm. We are using the wait mutex to ensure that the read counter value is manipulated by only one reader process at a time. Because multiple processes are given access, we make sure that one process at a time is changing this value. So for the first time, when the read count is initially 0, and when the first process, say process P1, tries to enter the shared or tries to access the shared data, now the read count is 1. If the read count is 1, it also runs the wait read write mutex. This statement is run and the signal is only for the first and the last process. It is only for this process P1 or any other last process that is leaving the shared data. Now again I am running signal mutex, indicating if there is any other process that is trying to access the shared data, it can do so. Now if there is another process, say process P2, that tries to enter, so again process P2 also runs the wait mutex. It increments the counter to 2. Again it signals for any other process to enter, and it can perform the reading. You can notice here the process 2 is not executing this if read count is equal to 1. Now again, while leaving, I am again changing the read count value, or I am decrementing the read count value. When I am decrementing the read count value also, to ensure only one process at a time is working on the variable read count or is decrementing the variable read count, I am using the mutex semaphore. So again I am running the wait mutex, manipulating the read count or decrementing the read count, and then again I am signaling the mutex. And if read count is equal to 0, this statement will be run if that is the last process in the system, or that is the last process that will be accessing the shared memory. So this is about your reader process. So reader process can be, many reader process can be simultaneously accessing the shared memory, and also it is keeping a count of the number of reader process accessing the shared memory. Whenever it is making a count of the number of process, it is running the mutex semaphore to make sure only one process at a time is acting on that variable. Now the next problem that we have is your dining philosopher. The other small thing that we'll have to discuss about your reader-writer problem is some of the variations the solutions can have. One of the variation is we make sure that no reader process is kept waiting until if there is some writer process that is there. Now let me give you an example. I say there are three processes, P1, P2 and P3. Now if P1 and P2 is categorized to be the reader process and if P3 is categorized to be the writer process. Now when all three process wants to access the shared memory, can we give the access to all the three process? Certainly not, because one of the three processes is a writer process. So now what we do is we shall put the process 1 and process 2 into the waiting, and we give access to the process 3, that is the writer process, to have an exclusive semaphore lock, and it is going to write. So until it completes the writing operation, it does not allow any other process, not even the reader process. Or to just even more elaborate it, if I have another process P4 and if process P3 and P4 also wants to write, one of this process gets a chance to write. Now if there is no process that is trying to modify the shared data, immediately we could give access to process P1 and P2. There is also another solution to this where it uses locks. To be very specific, Unix system programming has a concept of locks. So it has something called as the reader lock and writer lock, which uses the same concept. If there are more than one process that is willing to read the shared data, it can apply a reader lock. When there is a reader lock, it allows another reader process willing to read the shared data. But when there is a reader lock and if there is a request from another process to write, it shall deny. And in contrast, we also have the writer lock. So the writer lock is also called as an exclusive lock. When there is a writer lock applied, there is only one process that is allowed to write to the shared data. If there is another reader process or writer process trying to access the shared data, it shall be denied. So the reader lock is also called as shared lock, whereas the writer lock is called as an exclusive lock. The next and the last classic problem that we have is your dining philosopher problem. Now what is dining philosopher? First let us address to what is dining philosopher problem. Later we shall see how this dining philosopher problem could be related to the system. Now you can notice in this image that there are 5 philosophers sitting in a circular table with 5 chopsticks around, and there is a rice bowl that is in the center. Now what is the dining philosopher's problem tells? There are 5 philosophers. These 5 philosophers can be doing one of these jobs. Either they are thinking or they are eating. Now, if a philosopher wants to eat, he needs 2 chopsticks. But you can see in the image here, there are only 5 chopsticks available. If I have to say there was a requirement of sufficient chopsticks, then for 5 philosophers I should have had 10 chopsticks. But here you can see in the image 5 philosophers are given only 5 chopsticks. So the philosophers shall be sharing the chopsticks. Now there are some rules to this problem. What are the rules that it tells? If a philosopher, say he is philosopher 1, if a philosopher 1 wants to eat, he should be picking the chopsticks that is closest to him. And obviously he cannot pick the chopstick that is already in the hands of the neighboring philosophers. And the philosopher can eat only if he has both the chopsticks. Having said these rules, now let us see to the solution. So the philosopher is picking the chopstick using the weight semaphore, and he is releasing the chopstick using the signal semaphore. So the philosopher needs both the chopsticks to eat. Once the philosopher gains access to both the chopsticks, only then he can begin eating, and after he has completed eating, he has to release both the chopsticks. Now this is the solution that we were talking about. It runs the weight chopsticks. As I told, it needs 2 chopsticks and 2 chopsticks that is close to it. So if I is equal to 1, it needs I1, chopstick 1 and chopstick 2 that is close to that. If it gets both the chopsticks, then it is allowed to eat. After it has completed eating, it releases the chopsticks using the signal. So it releases both the chopsticks, and now the philosopher goes to the thinking state. Now, is the algorithmic solution given here fair enough? Is this sufficient? Certainly not. Now let us think about a situation. What if all the 5 philosophers are hungry at the same time? And what if all 5 philosophers pick up 1 chopstick? It ends up in an infinite deadlock. What happens is, all the 5 philosophers are hungry, all the 5 philosophers have picked up a chopstick, and they are indefinitely waiting for another chopstick. So because the other philosophers are also hungry, they would also not release the chopstick. All of them are in an indefinite wait, which eventually leads to deadlock. So what are some of the solutions for handling the deadlock? One of the solution tells, rather than having 5 philosophers, we could allow 4 philosophers to be sitting in the table with 5 chopsticks. So in this case, what happens? If there are 4 philosophers and all 4 philosophers are simultaneously hungry, and if all philosophers happen to pick up one chopstick, even then there would be one philosopher who can get 2 chopsticks. After the philosopher has completed eating, he would release the 2 chopsticks so that it can be used by the other neighboring philosophers, which would not end up in a deadlock situation at least. There could be a little starvation or wait, but there is no deadlock. The other solution it tells is, the philosopher shall pick up a chopstick only if both the chopsticks are available, else it is better not to pick up the chopstick. Because if a philosopher is just holding one chopstick doing nothing productive, he is wasting the chopstick as well as he is not doing anything as well. So it is better to pick up if both the resources are available. The last one, it tells, odd number of philosophers pick the left chopstick and then the right chopstick. Even number of philosophers pick up the right chopstick first and then the left chopstick. These are some of the solutions to handle the deadlock. We will further see how this is a semaphore solution that is given to the dining philosopher problem. We will again revisit the dining philosopher problem with the solutions by the monitors as well. Now, when I started the discussion of dining philosopher problem, I said, how could this be related to the system? It is the same here. There are several resources and several processes. If I call the processes to be the philosophers and resources to be the chopsticks, the processors will be here in the dining philosopher problem. The philosophers shared the chopstick. Here the processors have to share the resources. If a process is holding a resource doing nothing, it is wasting the resources. Rather, if the process picks up the resources only if it is available, we could be coming up with a deadlock free and starvation free solution. The next concept that we have is about your monitors. The monitors is similar to your semaphore. It is also a synchronization tool, but it is even more convenient and effective than compared to your semaphore. Now, what was the problem in semaphore that led to another synchronization tool called monitors? These are some of the problems with the semaphores. That is, the incorrect usage of the semaphore operation. You can see here, there are 3 cases that is defined. What if the semaphore operation of signal and wait is used like in these 3 cases? The first case that we have is, in a usual semaphore, we first run the wait mutex and then we run the signal mutex. What if that is reversed? What if signal mutex is run first and then if the wait mutex is run, what happens? The mutual exclusion is violated. you are allowing other processes to enter the critical section. If we take another case where we are running only the wait mutex both the time, what happens? It may end up in a deadlock. That is, a process is run a wait mutex and it has not released the critical section. It is continuously holding the critical section and there are other processes that is waiting to enter the critical section. Or the last scenario, where if wait mutex or signal mutex is omitted, if one of it is omitted also, it may lead to your deadlock issues. Either of these three cases, that is incorrect use of semaphore operation, that is the placement of your wait and signal is not right, or wait and signal is not used properly, that is only wait is used or only signal is used, or if one of the operations is omitted, this may lead to deadlock or starvation. Hence, we have come up with another synchronization tool, that is monitor. Now, what is monitor? How does a monitor look like? Here is an abstract data type that is given. We use the keyword monitor and then we give the monitor name, and inside monitor we define a set of programmer defined operations or procedures. Now, these procedures that is defined within the monitor can access only those variables that are locally declared within the monitor and its formal parameters. And the local variable of monitor can be accessed only by that local procedure as well. Now let us take a schematic view of the same. You can see this is a monitor. It has a shared data and a set of operations to ensure mutual exclusion within the monitor. Now, to allow a process to wait within the monitor, we need something called as condition variable. And also to mention, only one process at a time can be active within the monitor. Now, what is this condition variable? For example, if I have declared the condition variable x and y, these condition variable can perform only two operations, that is wait and signal. A process that invokes a wait would be suspended until it again invokes the signal. The operation of wait and signal is same as your semaphore, but monitors attach that operation with condition variables, which brings in more, it is even more an effective way of handling the process synchronization. Probably you will understand this when we would address to some of the examples of your monitors. As I told it to you earlier, we will be revisiting your dining philosopher problem with the monitor's solution. This is an illustration of using the condition variable associated with the x and y. You can see the cues associated with the x and y. Now, what are the things that can happen on the condition variable? If a process P invokes a condition variable x of signal and process Q is suspended in x of wait, it can happen in either of these two options. that is signal and wait or signal and continue. As discussed earlier, only one of the process can be active at a time. It can be either P or Q but not both. One of it will be active, the other have to wait. Monitor solution to dining philosopher problem. Before I look into the algorithm of the dining philosopher problem by monitor, which is also deadlock free, let us take a quick recap of what monitor is. Monitor is one of the way to achieve process synchronization effectively. It has a collection of conditional variables, and the conditional variables can perform two operations, that is wait and signal. The conditional variables, procedures, all are packed into a module or package named by the monitor followed by a monitor name. And then only one process at a time can execute the code inside the monitor, or only one process at a time can be active within the monitor. And we also know that the process running outside the monitor cannot access the internal variables. It can only call the procedure. Having said that, now let us look into the algorithm of dining philosopher problem. Here you can see, as told, we design the monitor program construct as a module or a package preceding with the keyword monitor. And here the dining philosopher is a user defined name given to the monitor. If I have to tell, you have the interface and the interface name. It is something similar to that. So you have a name that is given. Now what is the solution here talking about? How is the solution designed? There are three states that a philosopher can be. It can be thinking, hungry, or eating. And then this state is nothing but the enumeration variable. The state is a variable and it is a enumeration variable. Here 5 is nothing but the 5 philosophers that we are talking about. So these 5 philosophers are enumerated to have one of these states. It can either be in a thinking, hungry, or eating. Now if a philosopher is hungry and he wants to eat, he must pick up a chopstick, and he can eat or he can pick up a chopstick only if both the chopsticks that is closest to him is available. After he completes eating, he has to put down the chopstick. Now what is this self of 5? It is the conditional variable that we are talking about in the monitor. Probably when I have explained about the monitor, gave you the introduction of the monitor, we had the conditional variable x and y. Similarly, we have the conditional variable self here. Using this condition variable is where we will be calling your wait and signal. Now let us look into the algorithm. Now the first thing it is talking about is the as if the philosopher is hungry, he has to pick up a chopstick. So let us see what does the pickup procedure tell. So the pickup procedure for a process I or a philosopher I, the state must be hungry. and if he is hungry, we run another procedure called as test. So what is the test procedure doing? The test procedure is going to check if the besiding chopsticks are available. A philosopher can pick up the chopstick only if both the chopsticks are available. So in the test we are testing if both the chopsticks are available. If both the chopsticks are available, you allow the philosopher for eating, and then you call the signal where you can revoke the process. So wait is going to suspend the process, signal is going to revoke the process. So in test function, what do? We check if both the chopsticks are available. If the condition is satisfied, we allow the philosopher to eat. Now if it is not eating, then it has to wait until the chopsticks are available. You can see here self I of wait, where it is waiting to pick up the chopstick. If it has got the chopstick, you can see in the test here, it is allowed to eat and it is signaling that it is invoking the other process, that is, or the other philosopher who wants to use the chopstick. The next thing that we have is the put down procedure. Put down procedure is very simple. So here we are, if the status or the state of the philosopher is thinking, then he is going to release the chopsticks that he had acquired. So again we are calling the test. So here we are releasing the chopsticks and the condition fails, and it is going to signal so that the other philosopher or processor can be using the resources or the chopstick. So if this condition satisfied, he is allowed to eat. If this condition fails, it is nothing but he will be releasing the chopsticks. So it signals the other philosopher to use the chopstick. So initialization code is nothing but a default code. So initially everybody would be in a thinking state. So from the thinking state, a philosopher moves to hungry state to eating, and from eating back to thinking after they have released the chopsticks. So the process must follow this particular pattern. So whenever a philosopher wants to eat, he must pick up the chopsticks, eat, and put down the chopsticks. So this is about the monitor solution to the dining philosopher problem, which has no deadlock, but it tells there could be starvation. Why is that there could be starvation? That is, if a neighboring philosopher is hungry and does not have a chopstick, he has to wait until it is released. So that is where we say there could be some amount of starvation, but it does not have a deadlock. The next algorithm we have is about monitor implementation using semaphore. We have already seen earlier, semaphore is very good at giving your mutual exclusion. So can we have that for the monitor as well? Now if a process is executing monitor, can we ensure mutual exclusion for the execution of the monitor is what we will look in this algorithm. That is, a process must execute wait mutex before entering the monitor, and it must execute signal mutex after leaving the monitor. This ensures that only one process at a time is executing inside the monitor. Let us see some of the variables that is used. We have the semaphore variable mutex, and we have the semaphore variable next, and then we have a counter next count. So mutex, as we know, it ensures mutual exclusion. Next is used for a signaling process to wait until the resumed process either lives or waits. And next count is used to count the number of processes suspended. So if I say this is the body of the procedure F, now previously when we saw the dining philosopher problem, we saw that there are procedures as a part of the monitor. If we say this procedure is the part of the monitor, then we are ensuring mutual exclusion in the execution of this procedure. Now I run wait mutex, indicating that which is initialized to 1 shall be having the value 0, indicating that no other process is allowed. Now if the next count, that is if there is any process that is suspended, is greater than 1, then we run signal next, else we would run signal mutex, allowing the other process to work upon the procedure. Here the next count will count the number of process that is suspended. So if there is any process that is suspended, we signal that process has to wait, else we would just run a signal mutex, ensuring that, or allowing, we have run the wait mutex here, so that signal mutex is placed here. Here we are using the signal next for a signaling process to wait until it is resumed. So this particular algorithm ensures that the monitor is run in mutual exclusion, that there is only one process at a time that is running. Another example that we have on your monitor is resuming process within the monitor. So when we were discussing about the monitors, we saw the operations where wait is going to suspend a process and signal is going to revoke the process. Now the problem is, if there are several processes that is suspended, how do we determine which suspended process should be resumed next? I repeat, if there are several processes that are suspended, then how do we determine which suspended process should be resumed next? For example, I have process P1 to P5 and I say process P3 is in execution, whereas process P1, P2, P4, P5 is suspended. Now after the completion of the execution of process P3, which among the four processes should be resumed? Is it P1, is it P2, or is it P4 and P5? So one of the solutions that we have is first come first serve. We have also seen in your CPU scheduling that first come first serve is not a very effective method of resuming the process. The other solution that we have is conditional. So here in the conditional wait construct, we have x of wait of C, where C is the priority number. So based on this priority number, we shall resume the process. Now let us look into the resource allocation. So how is the resource allocation happening? So the resource allocation could take one of this form. You would understand this better when we talk about your deadlocks. So whenever a process wants a resource, it acquires the resource, accesses that resource, and it is going to release the resource. Now talking about the algorithm. So here is the algorithm for the resource allocation. So you have this boolean busy. This can be either true or false. This variable is used to indicate if the resource that you are trying to acquire is busy or is it free. And we have the conditional variable x, by which we can be calling your wait and signal. Now I was talking about the priority previously. We saw this construct, that is the conditional wait construct, s of wait of c. The c here is nothing but the time. So previously, if you remember, the wait and signal did not have parameter. Here we are passing a parameter, and that parameter here is the time. So we have seen the pattern. We have to acquire a resource, use or access the resource, and then release. So to acquire a resource, you first check if the resource is busy. If the resource is busy, probably you have to wait for a certain amount of time. If it is not busy, then probably you can acquire the resource, and now you are setting that to true, indicating it is busy if another process tries to acquire. The next thing we have is the release, where you are setting the busy to false. So here in acquire you are setting the busy to true, so no other process tries to access the resource. In release you are setting the busy to false, indicating that other process can use the resource. And then you call the signal, where you can invoke the other process. So in the initial code we give the default or the initial values. Initially busy will be false, indicating that the resource is available. If any process uses it, it will turn that to true. So this is another example. How do we write a code for monitors? How do we write a resource allocator code for monitor? But is this code very efficient? Not certainly. The code has certain problems. That is, a process might access a resource without first gaining the access. A process might release a resource once it has granted. A process might try to attempt to release of the resource that it has not requested. A process might request the resource twice. So these are some of the issues that is associated with the algorithm discussed above. As an exercise, I want you to find if there could be a better algorithm or a solution to this problems. So this completes our module 2 and the chapter process synchronization as well.